Week 1 in the NFL is generally the time for a lot of overreactions and stuff like that. At least that's what's assumed. But I really do think week 2 is the time for a lot of overreactions, because now you get you have another data point. There's now 2 options for confirmation biases, and if teams have looked good in back-to-back back-to-back times, you have to believe it, because it's twice now. And if they've looked bad in back-to-back times, you have to believe it. It's twice now. So, I am saying all of this with a lot of self-awareness, because I think, overreacted on a number of different teams in my power rankings this week. There was a lot of shifting from week 1 to week 2. So let's get into it. I know I said there was a lot of shifting. Not at the bottom. The Carolina Panthers are the worst team in the NFL. I talked about this the other day, but Daniel Jeremiah was on the Rich Eisen show and said this is the least talented team he has seen in 21 years in covering the NFL. It is abysmal what the Carolina Panthers are. And yes, Andy Dalton is going to come in and maybe stabilize things a little bit, but this is still a team that has a bad offensive line, minimal offensive weapons, and one defensive player that concerns you. This is as starting from scratch as it gets with an NFL team. The New York Giants are at 31. Yes, I know. They probably should have won against the Washington Commanders last week. And if they had had a functioning field goal kicker, they probably would have. But this isn't just a power rankings for on the field stuff. This is an entire organizational thing. And boy, did they fuck that up. When you know that your kicker is a little bit banged up, you bring in someone. There's a billion kickers out there. You get one of them. You don't need someone who can kick a 56-yard field goal. That was not the Giants' issue in this game. You need someone who can kick the 35-yard point after. Also, maybe punters should be able to do that. But we're in a specialized world. I understand that. Whatever. This was an abysmal loss for the Giants from an organizational standpoint. Also, I don't feel like enough people are getting on the Giants enough for allowing Washington to have 7 scoring drives. Yes, all of them were field goals, but still, you allowed the command. It would be better if it was 21 points by way of touchdowns, because then that's only 3 times they scored on you. For Washington to put together 7 drives on your defense that put points on the board is horrendous. And again, Daniel Jones has been brutal. Defensively, through a couple of weeks, this team has not looked very good at all. This is a very, very concerning run now for the New York Giants. The one thing I would caution for the Giants, I don't think, however this season goes, I don't think you fire the coach. I think Daboll is doing the best he can with what he has. The quarterback ain't it. And you have one good weapon. Wan'Dale Robinson is second on this team in targets. What is he supposed to do with that? Any scapegoating of the coach in this situation is incredibly unfair. And if he gets fired, other teams will pick him up immediately, because I think he is actually doing the best he can with this offense. At 30, it's Washington. They probably should have lost last week. The defense isn't very good. Jaden Daniels is getting absolutely smoked out there. And it's just not a very good football team. There isn't a whole lot. I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on these teams. I know I just spent a whole lot of time on the Giants, but we don't need to spend a whole lot on these teams. The Commanders suck. So do the Denver Broncos. They're in at 29. Bo Nix has made some very puzzling decisions in a couple of weeks, and again, we are seeing that this is just not a talented football team. The defense has made a couple of teams grind in a couple of weeks, but also they have played a couple of grinded out type of teams. I'll be interested to see what this Denver defense does against actual real offenses. Who does Denver have this week? This is something that I should probably know. Denver has Tampa Bay. So that is close to, certainly the closest to a very functional offense that Denver will have faced. So interested to see what the defense does, but the offense is bad. New England comes in at 28. They get the win 2 weeks ago against Cincinnati, an overtime loss against Seattle. Again, it's a bad roster. The offensive line can't protect anything. I will say, and it's been said, but if Drake May was playing, this team might be 2-0 right now, but that's not the point of this season. The point is, let this kid learn and don't get him killed behind one of the worst offensive lines in football. But the defense does look legitimately like it could be a problem for teams. At 27, it is the Tennessee Titans. They probably should have won that game against the New York Jets, and they probably should have beat the Chicago Bears, and they probably should be 2-0, thus the life of a young quarterback. I do think this is an improved roster. A little bit of this is just kind of playing the results right now with a couple of tough losses to start the season. At 26, it is the Chicago Bears. We all got a very good glimpse of what the issue is with the Bears on Sunday Night Football. The offensive line isn't very good. Caleb Williams, yes, there's a few times where it looks like that would have worked at USC, and it doesn't work in the NFC North. But I still think there are flashes of a very talented player in there. They didn't have Keenan Allen this last week. The offensive line is just going to be what it is. There isn't going to be a fix for that, and so that's going to be a concern all year long. The one thing that gives you a lot of confidence for the Bears is that defense looks legitimately really good. At 25, it's Cleveland. I can't get them any higher than this because Deshaun Watson still doesn't look like an overly competent quarterback. I think they lose to most teams the way they played against Jacksonville. Again, the defense steps up and looks really good. At 24, it's the Vegas Raiders. You get a win over a team that we had in the top 5. You probably should be higher than this. It hasn't really looked all that confidence inducing over the last the last 2 weeks. And so I think when you look at an offense that is this conservative, a defense that, while they have some absolute studs, also has a few holes, I think you just get a little bit more and more concerned as things go along, and you can kind of poke a few holes in the Raiders. So it's tough to put them ahead of anyone else right now. At 23, it is the LA Rams. It's just injuries there was a lot of optimism after week 1. All of it is gone now. The offensive line has just been beat up. None of their pass catchers can stay healthy. It is now basically Kyren Williams and nobody else. And the defense got absolutely walloped last week. So major concerns ahead for the LA Rams. At 22, it is the Indianapolis Colts. Maybe a bit of an overreaction to a couple of close games against playoff teams, but that defensive game plan against Green Bay was so abysmal, I had to punish them and put them a little bit further down. To not come out of your cover 3, knowing that the team that you are facing can basically only move the ball on the ground, is just coaching malpractice and horrendous execution from the Colts has them down here. At 21, Jacksonville, kind of ditto, where coaching I feel like has really let this team down. Defensively, this looks like a very good football team. Offensively, I am getting more and more concerned that Trevor Lawrence just isn't the guy and isn't going to be the one that is able to pull the nose up on this thing. At 20, it's Minnesota. Defensively, they have come up with a couple of very good games in a row. Now, one was against the Giants, the other was against the San Francisco team that was missing Christian McCaffrey and had a banged up Deebo Samuel and had Brandon Ayuk just not existing. So, take those results for what they are. Sam Darnold, though, is moving the ball competently on offense in a way that he never really has before, and I think you're starting to see the emergence of a couple of other weapons. Aside from Justin Jefferson, you have Aaron Jones, who looks like a weapon, and Ty Chandler looks legit, so there's a couple of pieces to get excited about with Minnesota. At 19, it's Dallas. This is a gigantic free fall in the rankings for the Cowboys, but how could you not? The one win they have is against a team who we think is going to be bad, and the one loss they have is against the team that we think is going to be bad, and one was significantly worse than the other. Offensively, this team just isn't great. It's the conversation we have had, again, a second Daniel Jeremiah reference of the day. It is the conversation we are having around Dak Prescott. Is he a truck or is he a trailer? Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks talked about this a lot on their podcast, and I think Dak Prescott is a trailer that is being asked to be a truck right now, and he's just not that guy. And defensively, they got whooped on, and that was eye-opening. Because I thought that at least the defense would be able to get enough pressure on Derek Carr to cause some issues. That didn't happen. And if they're not getting pressure, I think the secondary showed that even though they got a bunch of interceptions last year, maybe there's a few too many gambles being taken, and that leaves things a little bit exposed. At 18, it's Pittsburgh, one of the best defenses in the NFL, and an offense that just doesn't trust its quarterbacks right now, leads to a lot of mid results, which leads to them being toward the mid of the power rankings. A gigantic fall for the Miami Dolphins. Part of it is, yes, they lost Tua, and the assumption is it's not going to be a lengthy loss. It sounds like he's going to be coming back soon, probably sooner than he should. Hopefully not, but we know how these things work. But also, I think what is being lost from that game on Thursday night is just how soundly the Buffalo Bills were whooping that ass going into that game, or going into that play with Tua. And so I think there are more concerns in Miami than I wanted to believe at the start of the season. Maybe that'll turn around, but we will see. At 16, it's Cincinnati. They're kind of right around where we had them last week. A good performance. Maybe they should have won. A couple undisciplined plays, kind of going back to the early 2010s with the Bengals, where, yeah, good team, but penalties kind of cost him. Jamar Chase let out all of his contract frustrations on a poor official, and that was absolutely pass interference late in the game. But it looked better than it did in week one, and I think you can be confident that this offense is going to continue to grow. I do have worries about the defense, but I do think that they are going to at least be okay. At 15, it's Seattle. It's 2-0. It's 2 wins over bad teams that I wish looked a little bit better, but you can see what's starting to develop on offense, and you can see how this talent is really going to win through on the defensive side of things. So it's a lot to get excited about, I think, with Seattle. We just need to see it in a bit more of an exciting fashion. At 14, the New York Jets. This feels a little high for them, even as I'm going through this. But you get a breakout of Braylon Allen to go along with Breece Hall, so that's another weapon that you have offensively. Defensively, they didn't get as gashed up this week, although certainly not against a team that is as good. But we are anticipating them to continue to get better as the season goes along, and so there's a bit of projection going on in this one. At 13, it's New Orleans. I never thought I would have New Orleans in the top half of the power rankings this year, but when you put up 2 explosive games like they did, it's really tough to argue. Again, I think the defense is legit. I think that the offense is a bit of a house of cards, but so far so good. It's looked very impressive out in New Orleans. And there have been some adjustments that have actually paid off with New Orleans, right? They have been able to use a little bit more pre-snap motion. They've been able to get another player involved in Shaheed. And that, along with Alvin Kamara kind of finding what he had lost a couple of years ago, make this a very fascinating team going forward. At 12, it's Arizona. I was just waiting to take this team seriously, and now here they are. 2 amazing offensive performances in 2 weeks. They were Josh Allen putting the Superman cape on away from being 2-0. The defense looked so much better against the Rams. Now the Rams dealing with all those injury issues for sure, but that wouldn't have mattered last year. It's still not a great defense, but I think this offense is going to be able to carry this team to a lot of wins this season out in Arizona. At 10, it's Tampa Bay. Even I slept on them this year. They were my darlings last year, but now Baker Mayfield, again, has this team running competent offensively, and defensively, they were really able to give Detroit some fits in week 2, and that's a tough offense to do that against. So a good showing there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At 9, it's Green Bay. Coming off of a win where you don't have your starting quarterback is very impressive. The defense being able to limit Anthony Richardson is really impressive. When everything gets back up and running, this team is going to be, I think, the contender that I thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season. At 8, it's the LA Chargers. Again, this feels high for beating 2 teams that we do not presume to be postseason contenders, but I do think that the LA Chargers are a team that is going to give some teams some problems. Defensively, they're going to be a grind to play against. Offensively, both Dobbins and Edwards look like they are going to be legitimate options in this offense. Quentin Johnston has kind of grown into being an option for Justin Herbert. This isn't a good offensive team, don't hear what I'm not saying, but it's going to be good enough to put up enough points that I think they're going to hang around with their defense. At 7, it's Baltimore. Yes, it's 0-2. I still think they looked good on Monday, on that Thursday night game against Kansas City. And I do have concerns about how easily the Raiders moved the ball, but Baltimore was in complete control of that game for 3 quarters, and then it just kind of fell apart. The offensive line needs to improve so that they're able to run out the clock, which is not something you thought you would say about Baltimore. Them not being able to run the clock and put that game away is concerning. but I still think there's a lot of talent on that team. At 6, it's Detroit. They slip on a banana peel, and they lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. But I still think the emergence of Jameson Williams is really impressive, and this defense with Aiden Hutchinson is improved from the group that I had questions about last year. As we get into the top 5, chat, if there's anything you disagree with me on, let me know. Rank, I can't imagine everyone agrees 1 through 32 with how we're doing on these NFL teams. At 5, it's the Philadelphia Eagles. They should be 2-0. Saquon Barkley with a really bad drop. I have concerns again about the defense, but this is still, I think, a very high-level team in this league, and just one missed execution away, and maybe one bad play call away, honestly, from this team being a legitimate 2-0 championship threat. We're all talking about the Eagles after another win on Monday, but that's not the case, but I do think they're going to be fine. At 4, it's San Francisco. They get bumped down a couple of spots this week. I have concerns about how healthy they were last year, and now they're going to have to face a little bit more adversity with Christian McCaffrey out, with Deebo Samuel out. How do they adjust to that now on the offensive side is going to be very, very interesting. And I said I thought Brock Purdy might take a step this year. He's going to have to. If this team is going to hang around in the top 5. At 3, it's the Houston Texans. Honestly, it felt a little high coming off of a not overly impressive win over the Chicago Bears on Sunday Night Football, but I couldn't put them below. Like, are we putting San Francisco still ahead of Houston right now? No. Philadelphia? I don't think so. Detroit? No. Baltimore? No. Chargers? No. Like, saying Houston is number 3 in the power rankings after that game, it just feels high. But when you have an offense that can put up the numbers that they did in week 1 against the Indianapolis Colts, you have Nico Collins, who is able to kind of bust off a lot of those plays that he is, and the combination of speed and size is so dangerous and so impressive. Whatever run game they have, they're able to make it work. The thing that I think has them here right now is the defense. And yes, they got shelled for a couple of deep ones against the Colts in week 1, but that defense and how aggressive they turned going after Chicago in week 2 and the variety that they were able to show was really quite impressive. And I came away from that one still being very high on the Houston Texans. At 2, it's Buffalo. Are there some question marks around some of the skill position players? Yeah. Defensively, do we have a few worries? Maybe, but they really shut down the Miami Dolphins on Thursday night. And now, they didn't against Arizona, but I think we see how good Arizona is offensively. Monday night, they take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. That is a really, really interesting matchup to see how legitimate is this defense. It's an offense we don't super take seriously right now, but it's one that if they shut it down, it's like, okay, this is another data point that we feel confident in. And offensively, Josh Allen is just taking over. And at number 1, it's Kansas City. It was another reminder that this is a team that isn't going to blow out everyone every single week. In a last-second win over the Cincinnati Bengals. And they are dealing with some injuries as well, with Isaiah Pacheco going down. But defensively, this team is still elite. And you still have Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce hasn't gotten going yet. And you have a couple of very good pass-catching options that you should be excited about. I just see no reason to knock Kansas City off of this perch just yet as the number 1 team in all the land.